Monday. And we will be recording the service now, so there's a sign there that says got it or leave the meeting, so please make your choice. If you don't want to be recorded, your video should be off. I'm so pleased to be welcoming Jon Mundy today. Jon is no stranger to our congregation. The first time he spoke at UU Rock Tavern, are you ready for this? It was 1979, more than 40 years ago. I think he was a high school sophomore at the time. Jon began keeping records of his presentations in 1997, and between then and 2 years ago, 2019, he's been with us 14 times. So welcome back, Jon. We're glad to have you here. In addition to his public speaking, Jon is the author of 10 books. He also publishes the Miracles magazine. He directs the Miracles Studies program at the All Faith Seminary in New York City. And his 2011 book, Living a Course in Miracles, is a perennial bestseller, and his newest book is entitled A Course in Mysticism and Miracles. And Jon, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Take it away.
Thank you, Linda. It's very nice being with you all. I'm sorry that we can't just be over in that building that's just down the road here. I just live off of Route 207 here in Campbell Hall. And like Linda said, it's been wonderful to be with you a number of times. A number of you are friends for going way back. Mike Landau, Nancy Sears down at the bottom of my screen. I've known for, would you believe, 50 years? Oh boy. But it's true. Nancy used to come. I was the minister of Central Valley United Methodist Church from 1978 through 1989. But mostly like everybody else, I was doing a lot of traveling, talking, and that all went zoom. So everything is online now. So we decided that I would do about 20 minutes of presentation, and then we'll have in about 10 minutes so we can dialogue a little bit. So that takes me till about 10 minutes after to do the presentation, a couple minutes more than that, and then we'll talk. The topic for this morning is something I chose from A Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles has been my study guide for the past 47 years. It is chapter 21, section 2, which is titled Responsibility for Sight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to present this paragraph to you. It's just in the paragraph. It's 3 sentences. 3 sentences, but it has 5 ideas in it. I'll go over these, and I'll say what it is going to be first, then we'll go each one of the 5 basic ideas, and then we'll leave plenty of room for discussion. For those of you who may not know, this is A Course in Miracles. It was published in 1976. It was scribed, written down by a woman who's named Dr. Helen Schuckman, who is a research psychologist and professor at Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons in New York City, having in conjunction with her boss, whose name was Dr. William Tedford, who was head of the Department of Psychology at Columbia. So this is a very prestigious organization. The course has been studied by, well, we know there's about 3.5 million copies have been sold. It's not been phenomenal, but it works. And for the people who really get in there and study it, I've taught courses in philosophy and religion for over 40 years at a variety of colleges in the area, mostly at the New School University for 10 years, and then the State University of New York for 10 years, also Marist and Mercy colleges. And it's interesting how this fits into the whole history of revelatory thought that's been given to us, or mystical thought that's been given to us. By the way, let me just announce that beginning this week on Tuesday evening on Zoom, I'm teaching a course on American Transcendentalism. It's just going to be for 2 weeks only. It's this week and next week for an hour and a half each class. I'll tell you more about that at the end if you'd like to join. There's a fee, but if you're just interested, let me know and I'll give you a link to how to get to join that class. But let's come to our topic. So our topic is, I'm responsible for what I see. Now here's the 3 sentences and the 5 ideas I'll just say them first, and then we'll come back and go over the ideas. Number one, I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience. I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seemed to happen to me, I ask for, and I receive as I have asked. So let's go on. I'm responsible for what I see. We are totally responsible for everything that we see. Now that doesn't mean that you're causing the events that you see to occur, but it does mean you're responsible for how you see it. Now whether you bless it or curse it or have no simple act response to it at all, but we're responsible for our thoughts is the simplest way that we can say that. What are we thinking? What are we putting out to the world? How are we seeing the world? Are we complaining? Are we griping? Are we spending a lot of time opinion making and bitching and throwing that sort of stuff out into the world? Or are we looking at it through more beatific eyes, even seeing the beauty in little kinds of things, little details that the life can present to us? What is the attitude that we carry into? The attitude is very important. The attitude that we take with us as we go. And you notice how people have different attitudes. By attitudes, I mean you carry an attitude with you. And you see things from within the context of that attitude, if you will. So sometimes we think, well, it's probably a pretty good idea to change our attitude. In other words, to change our look. How do we look at the world? How do I see the world? As I see it as something that needs to be condemned, as I see it as something that even when it's ugly, it's beautiful. By that I mean I understand that there's purpose in it, there's intention in it, and there's something that I can get out of it if I want to see what's there, right? Just yesterday, for example, I was looking around on Zoom a little bit, not Zoom, but on YouTube a little bit, and I clicked on this thing about, it was court trials. You know, you can get addicted looking to stuff on there. I try not to do that. But there was some trial that was going on somewhere, and they brought a guy in. This was all live filming. And his head was completely tattooed. So on his head he had different things that he was saying to the world. And much of the stuff that was tattooed onto the side of his head was actually profanities. In fact, his head was kind of blocked out so that you couldn't read what was on top. But I thought, well, that's a real way to tell you the world what your attitudes are. And you can imagine some of the stuff that was written on the top of his head. It wasn't stuff that, it was essentially stuff that was attack the world, F you kind of stuff. I mean, this is what you saw when you saw this guy. Well, there's an attitude to carry with you into the world. What's the world's response going to be to this fellow? I mean, there's no wonder he's being in court. He seems to have a bad attitude, I guess we could say, right? What kind of attitude do I carry with me? How do I see the world? That's very, very important. I'm responsible for what I see. That's number one. Number two, I choose the feeling I experience. Well, what kind of feeling do I experience? I mean, and there's only, in the Course terms, there's only two possible feelings that we can have in the very, very broadest sense of what that means. The two broadest senses are, it's either I'm seeing the world through eyes of fear or with eyes of love. Which one do you want to have? Look over here, the fellow with the stuff on his head, all those tattoos, that was pretty fearful stuff that he was casting out there to the world. So I can be looking at fear, and if I fear, then I'm talking from a fearful place. As you all know, I publish a magazine called Miracles. I've been doing so for 36 years. And miraculously, it's growing, which is exciting to see that it's happening. Slowly, nothing phenomenal, but it's not going down, it's going up. So people are getting more interested in this. So, again, what is it that I'm seeing in terms of the way that I'm growing? Am I loving the world? The attitude we want to carry into the world is really one of consistently loving whatever, even the difficult, even the screaming child, even the thing that's not so pretty. If I can love that, I mean, that's who Jesus was. Let's say something who Jesus was in terms of the Course in Miracles. The definition that the Course gives for Jesus, it says, Jesus was a man who saw the face of Christ in all of his brothers and sisters and remembered God. That's an interesting definition. A man who saw the face. Now, what would it be like if you saw the face of Christ in everyone you see? You look and what you see, you're seeing Christ. How does Jesus become the Christ? In course terms, he becomes the Christ by seeing the Christ. You become the Christ by seeing the Christ. You become the good by doing the good, by seeing the good. If I'm finding fault, if I'm filled with opinion making, for example, then that's the world I see. A fellow wrote an article for our magazine many, many years ago, which he was talking about his aunt who had passed, and her basic attitude that he said that she carried around to the world, her main phrase that she used was, "Isn't it awful? Ain't it awful?" Ain't it awful or isn't it awful? That was the main thing. Isn't it awful about the coronavirus is doing all these terrible things, or whatever it is? If that's the way I approach the world with "ain't it awful," ooh, well, that doesn't sound very pleasant, huh? So what am I taking with me? What did Jesus take with him as he looked out upon the world? Can you see the face of Christ? Even in difficult situations, in the screaming child, right? And the people that really, they're the ones that we really need to look at with love. The guy that's got that stuff carved on the side of his head, that's somebody that really needs to be loved. Okay, I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience. Number 3, I decide upon the goal I would achieve. Well, there's only 2 possible goals in life. I just said there's only two possible attitudes. I'm either fear or love. The only goals I can achieve is I'm either looking for, searching for the truth, or I'm caught in some kind of falsehood. Those are the only kind. The falsehood is that I am somebody that I'm not. I'm creating a name for myself. I've got whatever the money. I'm creating an illusion. The illusions are the things that the egos create within the context of the world. Or the opposite is that we're looking for the truth. Now, I'm assuming if you're here at a UU congregational meeting on a Sunday morning, you're interested in knowing what the truth is. Aren't we all interested in knowing what the truth is? I mean, what is love? What is God? What do we really want to be having set for ourselves as the goals that we want to be pursuing in life? If I'm trying to figure out what's true and follow that truth, that's the most beautiful thing that I could possibly be looking for. Because that then should enable me to get closer and closer and closer to the kingdom of heaven. Because the kingdom of heaven will only be a place which is true. There can't be anything else. I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience. I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And now the one that probably is going to require the most discussion of all. And everything which seems to happen to me, I ask for. And I receive as I have asked. Whoa. I asked for COVID? I asked for this accident that I got into somehow or another. I asked for some sort of disease. I asked for this personal problem. I asked to be fired. I asked for all the things that seem to come my way that I think I don't want this into my life. But here it is. If I'm being responsible, the answer to that is yes. And well, I would never have asked for bankruptcy. Well, if you had a bankruptcy, then somehow or another you must have chosen bankruptcy because you got it. So the question then really becomes one of, well, what can I learn through this? How can I grow through this? The Course is very clear that everything, absolutely everything that comes our way is a part of a lesson. So what am I learning in this particular lesson? Now let me speak about COVID for a moment and a lesson I learned with COVID. Because I had COVID this past summer. I was 24 days in our local regional hospital with COVID. And it knocked me for a loop. I don't know how many of you have had it, but I mean, what it does, I had the Delta variant of COVID. It takes your energy. You have no energy. It was gone. I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. I had to get up to go to the bathroom. But the thought of that, the thought of getting up, the thought of trying to make it into the bathroom was a very difficult thought. It wasn't something that you wanted to even to try to do, but you had to do that. I'm saying so. But on the other hand, COVID turned out to be a very beautiful experience for me. And I'll explain how it turned out to be a very beautiful experience. What happened was that it was an experience of the world coming to a stop. It came to a grinding halt. Number one, I didn't have a computer with me. I always have a computer. It seems like I spend more time, my wife would agree with this completely, sitting in front of that computer than doing most anything else, right? Well, that's because I work with the computer in addition to being able to chat with people, etc. It's a job that I do. But all of a sudden that didn't exist. That wasn't there. I didn't have anything to read with me. I didn't even have a piece of paper and a pencil. One thing that I did have, though, and I'm grateful for that, I had a cell phone. So the cell phone meant that I still had a relationship with the world, and there was a book or two on there that I could look at, and there was a workshop on there that I could listen to, so that was all important. But what I'm getting at was what was good about it. What was nice about it was that the world stopped. I had an opportunity to go into the desert for a little while. Jesus' experience of going into the desert, the 40 days and the 40 nights, I think are a very, very important preface to his ministry. There's not one single word of the way of ministry on Jesus' part until after the wandering in the wilderness. Not one word. So 40 days and 40 nights are spent in this deep, going way, way, way down in and looking and making an identification. The identification is establishing his identity. First of all, he has to look at this thing we call Satan or the devil, which in course terms that would be something we call the ego. And the ego has this way of kind of taking over the world and dominating our thoughts, and it's not a very pleasant thing. Egos have done terrible things to other egos and people in the course of time. And the greatest egos of all, the Hitlers and that level of insanity that's possible is really completely insane. But we're all insane to some degree, the Course would say, right? So what we're looking to do is to find a way out of our insanity by getting back to that love thing. But what was happening was really the world stopped. There was no dialoguing, there was no computer, there was no talking like that. On the phone, yes, but not in any other way. Lots of time to meditate. Lots of time to go within. I didn't even want to watch television. It was there, I could, but I didn't find anything interesting on it. So it's really going in, finding out who we are deep down inside. So I appreciated that time and came back from it different. I don't know how else to explain it, but came back different. Whenever a tragedy falls into our lives, people often change. They come back different. If you lose a loved one, that's going to make you different. You're going to, the days, the time after, it's kind of like going into the desert. The world for you stops. A very important part of your life came crashing to an end. That changes you. That changes your outlook on the world you see. Any major change like that. I'm glad to hear that, who was this? That's, you got a retirement coming up. That's a good thing. But that also is going to change us. So maybe give it an opportunity to go deeper. I would take that deeper. What does that mean? How can I now relate to the world in a wholly new way? Very interesting. But really the important word here was everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for. This world is a school. In fact, I taught courses on esoteric and mystical philosophies for 40 years. I do not know one single esoteric mystical tradition, not one, that doesn't say this world is a school. That's why we're here. We're here to wake up. We're here to learn. We're here to grow, spiritually speaking. Whatever else you do. When we finally comes to leaving the school, to being exit, and we're all going to be there very soon. And that's not an attack or thought. Within 10 years, some of us will not be here. Within 20 years, many of us will not be here. That's not very far. My wife and I were talking last night about 20 years ago. That was yesterday. Wasn't that just yesterday? 20 years? Wasn't it 2002? Wasn't that just the other day? I think it was just the other day. And what happened? How did I get here? Well, the next 20 is going to go like that too. And many of us are going to get to graduate, go home, so to speak. How are you going to go home? With what kind of mind will we take back? Will we be willing to sit back and let go, let God take over, let God become the director, even in a deeper way? Right now we think that we're directors. Course in Miracles says the major problem we all have, the major problem, is the authority problem. And what's the authority problem? The authority problem is we say to God, thank you very much, God, but I'd really rather do it myself. I'm in charge. I will run my own life. Usually, you leave me alone. But it doesn't work very well. You know, we need that guidance. We need that direction. We need the Holy Spirit's presence in our lives as well. And we need to be able to identify that that presence is there with us, guiding us in everything we do. So what am I learning? Am I learning enough that I can graduate? So actually, believe it or not, that's 19 minutes. I've already been talking. So let me summarize. And then we'll dialogue for 10 minutes, okay? I'm responsible for what I'm seeing. Totally responsible. If there's anything the Course is about being totally responsible for everything, for my health, my finances, my relationships, all those. I am responsible. I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience. That's a broad choice, all the way from fear to love. Which one do I want to go to? Am I going to go with love? Or am I going to get caught up in fear, and am I going to be seeing all the problems that are out there in the world? I decide upon the goal I would achieve. There's only two possible goals. You can either go for the truth, or you can go for an illusion. Who in the world wants to build an illusion as a definition of who they are in the world? I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I decide. I decide upon the goal of which, and everything that happens to me, I ask for. And I ask for it because this is a classroom. And I sign up for different classes. And you think, well, I would never have signed up for this. Here's a class. I signed up for divorce? My God, I took a class called divorce. Well, yeah, what did you learn in that classroom? I bet you learned a lot. You should have learned a lot. Hopefully you learned a lot. You think, well, I don't want to repeat that class again. And yet some people do, right? 2 or 3 times. Right? All right. So anyhow, we're responsible, and that's 20 minutes. So I would really like to be able to dialogue with a few of you. If you want to, some people can just raise your hand. You can either raise your hand physically or raise your hand with if you know how to do it with Zoom, and share with us for a minute.